Hi guys, welcome back to True Crime with Tiff Kline. I am back with Season 2, Episode 14, back with Part 2 featuring Aspen Connor. You guys told me that you enjoyed him being on the last podcast and you wanted more, so he will be on tonight. And we're stepping back into a case that had shaped an entire community, a case that echoes through the hearts of anyone who has followed the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty Germain in Delphi, Indiana. Joining me once again is someone who doesn't just know this case from headlines or documentaries. He lived it up close. Aspen Connor, who attended the Delphi trial in person, who has stood beside Abby and Libby's family, who has witnessed their strength, their heartbreak, and their unwavering fight for justice. Part 1, we discussed Aspen's relationships with Abby and Libby's family, a little bit of his experience in Delphi, the tension, the emotion, and the weight. But tonight, we're going to go deeper. So Aspen, I'm just going to introduce you again. Thank you for joining me. I know last time we had fun and people wanted you back. So thanks for jumping back in.
Well, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate the really kind intro. I didn't write it or anything.
It's okay. That's just personal from me. So, we're just going to have a little bit of a conversation. I want you guys to hear Aspen's experience about the trial, what it was like to see it, feel it, hear it, and just be there. So with that being said, I will dive right in. Oh, Aspen, I know you went to Delphi. You've been there a few times. You just got back from there, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I lost count, but since the first time I went to Delphi, I've spent well over 200 days in Delphi, and the majority of those trips, especially since the trial has ended, have been for completely different reasons. Just because I've come to really grow to love the town. I've gone to support different events, different charity things. I volunteered for the Bacon Festival last year. I was a judge recently for a competition they had in town. I went for a fundraiser for a racing event for one of Libby's cousins. So yeah, I mean, any chance I can find to go to Delphi, I usually end up there. And everyone jokes that I'll end up moving there one day. And I say, well, not until I can become mayor.
Oh, well, I've never been there, so it'll give me a reason to visit. I grew up in Ohio. That's close. I've only been to Indianapolis, but it was very, very brief. So,
well, I will take you there anytime you want to go.
All right, we will definitely.
I think I have an honorary citizenship.
Aspen and I like to travel a lot, so I feel like we're going to be travel buddies. I'm like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I might go to the Bahamas. All right, I'll get a ticket. I'll see you there. That's how it's going to be. I feel like.
I hear there's someone that might need our help there.
Yeah, that Lynette Hooker case, right?
Yes.
So, all right, let's set the scene here. When you walked in to the courtroom for the first time, what struck you the most about the atmosphere?
The first time I had walked into the courtroom, of course, was actually before the trial because I had gone to a few of the hearings. We discussed that in the first episode that we did. I will take one step back though, and then let you know that because of the size of Delphi, they chose a jury from a different county in Indiana. And so the jury pool was taken from Fort Wayne, which is also actually where the special judge was from, Francis Gull. And so starting on October 13th of 2024, there were 4 days of jury selection scheduled in Fort Wayne. And Fort Wayne, for anyone that is not familiar with Indiana, is about 2 hours from Delphi. And so the 4 days of jury selection were to take place in Fort Wayne, which is beautiful. And once the jury was seated, the jury was sequestered, and then everything moved to Delphi and Carroll County, which is a very small courtroom, small courthouse, beautiful though in the town square. I believe that on average there were about 16 to 20 seats available for the public. So a very small courtroom. They were not.
Did you have to get there early in the morning to like get a seat?
So that's and so that's where I was leading with it is that so I went to the jury selection in Fort Wayne and that was an intense 4 days. I never sat through a jury selection before, but it was really really interesting for anyone that's kind of like a law nerd like I am. And that was my first forte into that. Once the jury was seated, I think that was the trial was scheduled to start on the 17th, which would have been a Thursday or Friday, if I remember correctly. And literally, once the jury was seated, everything was like, okay, great. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in Delphi. So, I did the 2-hour drive to Delphi, checked into my Airbnb, who I was staying with the first couple of days with some friends that I knew there. And we had planned on just, relaxing and kind of going to dinner and then we knew we'd have to get there early in the morning because it is, a small courtroom. We knew there would be a lot of public interest. There were not cameras in the courtroom. That is something that, has been very controversial, something that I personally have gone back and forth with. And so I got into Delphi, checked into the Airbnb, and then about 7:00 that night, I got a text message that there were people in line outside of the courthouse.
Wow.
So this was the night before opening statements. And I had slept very little even at that point because we had to get to jury selection early. I mean, not that early. We would get there around 5 or 6 in the morning, just to make sure we could get in and have a seat. And there weren't as many of us there for that. But as soon as you hear that there are people in line and you've literally, taken 6 weeks of your life and put them on hold, I own my own business. I have family, all of those things were put on hold so that I could come support Libby and Abby's family and really see that those girls got the justice that they deserved. And you didn't want to do all of that for them not be able to get into the courtroom.
Absolutely.
So we, the two friends I was staying with the first couple of days, we literally just decided, okay, let's shower, get dressed, and head to the courthouse. And so that's what we did. And that set the tone for the entire trial, which over the course of the 5 weeks became increasingly earlier and earlier and earlier to the point where the court started to break the sessions into lunch or morning and afternoon. And if you were in line for the morning session, which you would have to literally leave court after it ended at night and get in line.
Wow.
And
to be back in for the next morning.
And they then decided that that did not guarantee your spot for the afternoon. So they started a second line for the afternoon. So for you to attend both morning and afternoon court sessions, it became very interesting, and it became very contentious, and it became very, I would say, argumentative at times between people.
Okay.
Some of the larger people that were there covering the trial had incredibly kind, wonderful viewers. Many of you are probably right now that lived locally and that volunteered to actually go sit and be a line holder.
Wow.
And that was something that was just so kind. And people started to do it for me, and I'm no one. So so for people to go out of their way to sit in literally the snow, rain, freezing weather overnight, just so that you could then they would leave and let you go in. Some people were paying people. I know of someone that was paying someone $500 a night to sit in line. And so, yeah, I mean, it became, I think anyone that went to the trial would agree with me that they would say it became a very intense, traumatic, almost Lord of the Flies type situation. And that I want to make sure I say does not matter. None of that should even be important because every single one of us that was there chose to be there. Libby and Abby did not choose what happened to them. Their families did not choose to have to sit in that courtroom every day, but they did. And so, I would do it 1,000 times over again if I got to be there to support them.
Absolutely.
So I'm not complaining when I say that it doesn't take away from some of the events that took place that were shocking or traumatic, but it was not about us.
Were you able to get to both sessions every day, or were there some that you missed?
I was there. There was not a time that I was not able to get in. There was one day that I woke up and my eye was swollen and like was pouring water. I went to court. I made it through the day, and someone was like, "You have an eye infection." So the next day, I did not go to court, and funny enough, I got a message from a family member of one of the girls that night that said, I know you weren't in court today. I hope you didn't go home. But if you did miss a day, don't worry. It was nothing but, it was all very technical stuff." She was like, so you, you didn't miss anything of huge substance. So that was nice. And I will say, just as a side note, I know Delphi is a very small town. I didn't know if there was even an eye doctor in town. I don't have a healthcare provider through there. I couldn't call my doctor and get a prescription out of state. And I didn't even know what it was. So I assumed they would just give me some antibiotic for an eye infection. And, someone that lived in town made a televisit for me with a local doctor, had the prescription sent in to CVS, the CVS that Richard Allen, the now convicted murderer of Libby and Abby, worked at and was a pharmacy tech at. And
that's gotta be haunting.
And an ex-police officer that lived in Delphi, who I'd met once or twice, went out of their way, left work, picked up my prescription, and brought it to my Airbnb.
Wow.
That's the kind of people that live in that town. And
like
I just, I just wanted to point that out, because to take away from the trial for a second, but, to have people go that far out of their way to care for essentially a stranger. I won't ever forget those things. But then, yes, the next morning I was back in court, and I was there every day. And the only other time I missed a second of anything was I was not in the courtroom when the verdict was read, and that was by choice.
Okay.
And there were only going to be, I think, 10 seats available. I had gotten in. I was number 2 in line. There was a lot of animosity and things going on at that point at the trial. I personally was so emotionally invested and involved at that time. I knew that the family didn't need me in the room. I felt confident in the outcome, and I knew that I was going to be with them 2 seconds after they walked out of the courtroom, which apparently I was on court TV doing. So I did not attend the actual reading of the verdict. And as I found out later, someone actually tossed my chair out of line anyway. So I guess someone didn't want me in there to begin with.
Wow, that's very nice of them.
And I wasn't about to argue. I was not going to be a part of the problem.
When media shows up, I'm asking this because I'm curious, do they only let so many media in as well, and then they cap it? Or do they just get first come, first serve?
Yes. So there was a media pool that I believe, and I am actually doing this completely without any of my notes or anything. And we're going on a year and a half now, but I believe the media pool is 12 journalists, and the Judge Gull, who is interesting because she made some decisions that I personally questioned, or may have made different choices on, but I'm not a judge. And she defined media very specifically, more specifically even than the Indiana law. Because every state, I guess, has a definition of what they consider media, right? And Indiana's is strict. It's you can tell it was written a long time ago, before certain things like YouTube channels and podcasters were as big of a presence. But there were some larger podcasters and media people that are in new media, it's what we would call it, that did apply for, and you had to apply for to be part of the media pool.
Got it.
And they were all denied. So the only people that were issued media passes were people from traditional major outlets, your local television stations, few local papers, and not everyone from those places could get in every day.
Interesting.
So they had 12 people and it rotated. And because of the no camera thing, they also then had to distinguish and pick one journalist to take all notes.
Wow.
And then share them with all the other journalists. So what would happen at the breaks, and it was always interesting to see.
We're probably screenshotting everything.
Well, you can't. No.
Couldn't.
There were no electronics were allowed in the.
Well, I didn't know if they went outside and did that.
So not even could you not bring an electronic into the courthouse. You could not bring it into the court. Nothing. You couldn't bring a watch. You couldn't bring anything you have to leave everything in your car. So no one had any electronic devices. So people would run out down the stairs, and the court room was on the third story. It's a beautiful marble spiral staircase in a huge rotunda, and you would see the journalists running down the stairs, and they would run outside, and they would hurry up and transcribe their handwritten notes, and you'd see a hover of them all over each other, copying the notes. And honestly, they did the very best they can. I don't think anyone was ill-intentioned, but it is how some, I think, misinformation got out, because I think the person designated to take notes for that day may have gotten one little thing wrong.
Yeah.
They may have gotten, a number wrong, or they may have gotten a small fact wrong. But then that was the only information all of the other journalists were then going off of. And again, that's because there were no cameras in the courtroom. And I'll give you a side note. My friend Susan Hendricks, who
love her,
all of you know, she got picked to do and she's talked about this publicly, so I feel comfortable saying it. She was selected one day to be the note taker.
Oh.
And she was not even actually allowed in the media pool the entire time, because she was no longer with CNN or Headline News. And apparently some of the other journalists that were in charge or whatever, who I actually respect and like a lot, but didn't like her note-taking skills, and they told her she couldn't do it again.
Wow. She's amazing. And she's the one that spent the most time with Abby and Libby's family. Like she would, I think out of all the reporters, she would know it the best.
Well, I mean, knowing the, but her not, knowing the family and knowing the case and is very different than knowing the trial.
True.
A trial is very different. And it's interesting when you are so involved and connected to people or a case that, that you then get this almost such a different, like a sterileness to it when it comes to the court, because a court does not have a heart. Like the law does not have, is not emotion.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it can be very hard to separate those things sometimes.
You said that Court TV was there. Was Vinnie Politan there, or was it just his team?
If I like Vinnie Politan, I like him. I respect him. I don't remember. I'm really bad at knowing and recognizing people when I see them. Like, I've been introduced to people that I should know who they are.
Yeah, no, I mean, how many of all? Yeah, there's so many of them.
And it was such a chaotic, exhausting, long, very, very, very. There was not a lot of sleep, not a lot of. You also could not have food or beverages in the courthouse at all. No water, no food in the courthouse at all. So once those doors opened at 8 a.m., you had nothing until the one break they would have in the morning, and then lunch. So we were all starving, dehydrated, sleep deprived, and I think we bought the entire state of Indiana out of heated blankets, sleeping bags. I mean, we have pictures. You can find them online too. I mean, I remember seeing
people outside
out like homeless people or like unhoused people sleeping on the wheelchair ramp at the courthouse.
How many people in an estimate would show up every day? Like, just an estimate.
It would depend on the day, of course. The first, I would say, week or two, there were more people than there were seats. So people were turned away every day. There was probably a few days that people, I think, would come and get discouraged by because everyone kind of knew how many seats were available. And it did fluctuate sometimes because Abby and Libby, especially Libby, has a large family. And so depending on what the testimony or what was going to be happening that day, you would have more or less family members in the courtroom. The core of Libby's family was there every single day. the core of Abby's family was there every single day. There were a few instances where Abby's mother left, which I respect and understand. And then there were times that, some of the extended family were there. Libby's birth mother and her, her children, were there. They took up a large
Yeah.
part of the court of the gallery. So, there were usually between like 16 to 20 seats. So I think sometimes when people would show up at, night, 1 a.m, and see that there were 20 people in line, they'd be like, what's the point? And they'd leave.
Okay.
And we did start to kind of have a rhythm as far as the line sitting and stuff like that, like the wonderful kind people. And I still talk to some of them because they just went out of their way to be so incredible. But they'd be okay if, you're like, hey, I'm going to run home, like say an hour and a half before the doors open for court. I'm going to run back to my Airbnb and take a shower. And so, like I got, my friends, just different friends of mine would be like, okay, that's cool. Yeah. And then when you get back, I'll go take a shower, stuff like that. I'll go get a coffee. Thank gosh that there was in the little town of Delphi, a Shell station that is like not even a block from the courthouse that is 24 hours and had the kindest two, I think, brothers that owned it or worked there. And they probably looked at us like we were the craziest people in the world, showing up freezing to death at 3 a.m. Like we were all like, like on drugs or something, shaking, trying to, wait in line to go to the bathroom and buying them out of hand warmers and coffee.
I love that many people gave that to Abby and Libby, though. Like they showed up just to support the family. I mean, you're going to have some of those people who are just nosy, but the majority, they show up because they want justice for those girls. My next question was going to be...
I want to say really quickly. One of the reasons it was important for me to be there was because I wanted to make sure that there were enough people like that, because this is a very divisive case. It still is. There are still a lot of people that feel differently after the verdict. And so not everyone in that courtroom was there to support Libby and Abby's family. I want to make that very clear.
Okay.
And I want to make it very clear that there were people in that courtroom that did not show Libby and Abby's family grace, kindness, or any respect.
Disgusting.
I will say, though, conversely, that oppositely, that Libby and Abby's family were kind and they were generous and they were welcoming to every single person that was in that courtroom, to the point where, and this might be private, but there were times that they showed up outside of the courthouse at 4 a.m. with pizza. There were times that they showed up and brought McDonald's. There was times that they brought homemade cookies and they handed them out. It didn't matter who you were. It didn't matter whether you supported, and this is a small enough community at this point that you pretty much know what camp people are kind of in. And even some of the podcasters and YouTubers, you could tell after, some of their coverage started where their narrative was going and how it was being shaped and how it was being presented was very consistent to the way that they wanted it to be, I will say. And that did not matter to Libby and Abby's family. What mattered to them is that they were nice and that they were kind and welcoming to everyone. And so they handed out those sandwiches and cookies to everyone. It did not matter whether you had supported them or not.
So they're there grieving, getting justice for their daughters and nieces and, grandchildren, and siblings, and they're out there handing out food and comfort items.
Yes.
Wow.
And making sure that everyone has what they need.
Wow. I don't even have words for that. See, I never knew that. That's holy crap.
And they didn't do it for, they didn't do it for attention. I said, they may not have even, enough people know that they did it, but
they took
I'm not giving away
that's
a secret.
The time that people should usually be taking care of them, and they're more concerned about everybody else. Like that just shows the character that they are.
And not only would they take time out of their time, but they would make a point to do it when they knew like that people had been out there all night. So they'd wait, so that I don't know what time McDonald's closes, or if it does, but to show up at 3 a.m. with hundreds of dollars worth of food or 10 pizzas, and that was all in their own dime.
Wow, that just gave me chills. That's just amazing.
And the interesting thing to me then also was that the audacity that some people I felt, just personally, when I watched some of the people take their hands and reach them out to take a sandwich or to take a donut or to take something. Just me personally knowing what some of these people had said and felt, I'm like, that takes a different level of disgustingness in my opinion. I apologize. I don't want to be negative, but
No, I bet that's something you witnessed, and that's disgusting.
to literally take food from someone that you have said horrible, horrible things about, that, I don't know, well, these people are going through the worst hell of their lives.
Well, that's what was going to lead me to my next, when there were moments, were there moments with Abby and Libby's parents or, core family when their emotions shifted inside or outside the courtroom, whether it's hope, grief, anger, frustration, or were they pretty, consistent all the way through?
There were, I don't want to speak for them, of course, but there were days that visibly you could tell were incredibly harder than others. There were days that were incredibly more frustrating than others. Part of that might just be me knowing their personalities well enough to pick up on those things. I know that for most of the families that were there every day sat pretty much in the same seats. Libby's grandfather, step grandfather, Mike Patty, it doesn't matter, her grandfather, he sat in the aisle, on that aisle seat, every day, and he took notes. He took notes. I later found out what the notes, were, which was funny, that he was, kind of saying what, he thought they did well that day and what they hadn't done well. And, and then letting the lawyers know. But that's the kind of Mike is. I mean, he is not those families waited long enough to get that day in the court. They were going to make sure that their day in court was worthwhile, regardless of the outcome.
I was going to say too, I didn't get to meet them at last year's Crime Con, but I remember being at the Clue Awards and seeing their families accept their crime fighting award at the Clue Awards dinner. And you can just tell looking at them that they're the most humble, down to earth, regular, like you said, giving people a line food at 3 a.m. Like they have good souls and you could see it. They weren't up there gratified that they won an award. It was, they were humbled to get something for fighting for justice. But it wasn't about the award or recognition. It was just it was more of like people at CrimeCon giving them support for everything they've gone through and letting them have their moment. That's what it was like for me. And I saw them and all of them were up there and it was really emotional.
And Nicholas McClellan, the prosecutor, and Jerry Holman, who are two incredible men, the prosecutor and the lead detective as well, who were both at CrimeCon as well. I'm glad that they got to experience that this year because they deserve to be up there as well. Because, as much criticism as people gave the investigation, and I myself have criticized parts of the investigation throughout the years, I can say with 100% certainty that not a single individual, and there were hundreds of them that worked on that case, not a single one of them did not think about Libby and Abby 24 hours a day. And Jerry Holman did not and probably will not ever stop thinking about Libby and Abby. And he said something that in an interview once that resonated with me. And and I wish it was my own thought because it's exactly how I feel. And it's that he didn't realize it at the time, but that he is a better person because of Libby and Abby. And I 100% am as well.
I love that. And I know a lot of, interviews I've watched, not just with their case, but others, when the lawyers and the cops and they go all in and it's with them for life. And they always say, like, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about them. And then usually moving forward, everything they do is because of them.
Yes.
Whether if it's professional, personal, anything, and they keep pictures of them because it is, it's life-changing.
When you think most police officers and most lawyers and people in these investigations, they have families, they have children. And in a town like Delphi, they know the victims. They know the victims' families. They have children or grandchildren that were friends with the victim, or they might even know the killer. So, it can be very complicated, but, I think that's one reason some of my friends that are police officers, especially, have told me that, cops will, they have the darkest senses of humor. And I've experienced this with family in the medical industry as well. And I think that it's because they kind of have to.
Yeah.
Just like we do in true crime. There's times where you have to be able to laugh and take away from it. And cops especially, I think, like to say that they have these really dark senses of humor because they see the darkest things in the world. The darkest, most evil people in the world.
I was going to say, Gabby Petito's bonus dad, Jim, was a first responder. Now he's out training first responders, but he said they're taught to just turn things off and they objectify it, but they have all this trauma and tragedy that they're told basically just suck it up and deal with it. You're a man, and, they're encouraged to get therapy. And now he was able to identify Gabby because he has that experience and he knows how to handle it, but he's still doing therapy because of that. All the stuff he went through in the past came up while they were, investigating Gabby's
I
case.
can only imagine.
He's an advocate for that.
And that's important, and not to take away from the trial of what we're talking about, but that is something that while I'm making light of the fact that they have dirty senses of humor and they can joke about things that are dark, which is a compartmentalization skill. I don't think that's necessarily the most unhealthy compartmentalization skill. But I do know that officers and investigators, they have incredibly high self-harm rates. They have incredibly high domestic violence rates. They have incredibly high divorce rates. I mean, pretty much all that industry is at the highest of a lot of the rates you don't want to be in the high end of.
Absolutely.
So the fact that that we live in a culture now where people, especially men, because there's definitely still a gender discrepancy as far as what is allowed emotionally for women and what is allowed emotionally for men, at least socially. So I'm glad that we're, that there are people like Jim that can recognize that and help others, men especially, know that it's okay to feel things and, you're still a man.
No, he's out. And again, I know this isn't about Gabby, but he's just a good example of teaching other first responders how to process things like that. So that's important.
Right. I would say Jerry Holman takes on that role as well as does an officer, Dave Vito and Steve Buckley, who were also involved in the Delphi investigation and actually have their own podcast now called the Detectives Podcast. Not to plug them, but they do, and they were at CrimeCon last year. They'll be there this year. So if you're at CrimeCon, stop by and see the Detectives booth, and they're fun.
Will.
They're actually really great guys, really great guys.
Well, I'm sure that I'll meet a lot of people with you this year that I didn't get to meet last year and vice versa. So it was just my first experience. So this year that I can actually take my time, but I'll definitely stop by their table. So what was it like for you watching the courtroom, watching a painful testimony and witnesses' statements and just everybody in the courtroom? What was it like sitting there for you? What did you feel? What did you experience?
It's hard to put into words because nothing can prepare you for that. You can watch a million trials on television, which most of us have. I think we all, if you're old enough, I think we all remember even watching the OJ trial.
Yeah.
And I've watched a bazillion trials since, and I have been guilty in the past of, kind of zoning out and making comments about physical features of, a bailiff or, the speech pattern of a lawyer or, the Depp Heard trial. I think everyone just loved to criticize poor Elaine.
Was there,
but when you're in the courtroom and you're sitting there, and especially in a small courtroom, and I don't think it matters whether the family members or not, but when you're sitting next to or behind the mother of a 14-year-old murdered child, you can't put into words what those feelings are like. And then on the days that some of the testimony or some of the exhibits are more difficult to see or listen to sit there and see them yourself, to react to them and feel the way you feel as you're hearing and seeing things, then to experience it by watching them makes it even more I can't put it into words. I'm sorry.
No,
It's
sometimes
not
you can't.
it's not an emotion that you could ever prepare yourself for, and it's not an emotion that you can ever you ever want to go through again. But it does not compare to the emotions that I can only imagine that the family members feel and go through.
Were you sitting close to Richard Allen or his family?
There were days there. So the way that the courtroom is set up is, like I said, it's very small, and I don't know why. It's funny because it's my OCD, or it's like an ism or something. But I always kind of like I identify like the defense always in my mind should be on one side, the prosecution should always be on one side, and like the witness box should always be in one place.
Yeah.
And so it kind of threw me because in Delphi, so if you're sitting in the gallery and you're staring at the judge, the defense was on the right hand side of the courtroom next to the jury box, and then the prosecution was on the left hand side. And I don't know why, but in my mind that's flipped. And so the family members would pretty much take up most of the prosecution side. There were most days there was like a row. There's only 4 rows in the Delphi courtroom, with a middle aisle, 4 or 5, and then there's a large area in the back where a lot of the police officers and the different employees that work through the investigation, they would congregate back there. So they weren't necessarily in seated areas. So yes, I was seated directly behind Libby and Abby's families on days. I was sitting next to them on days. I was sitting across the aisle from them on days. One day, Susan and I couldn't. We were coming back from lunch, and we were the first two. They wouldn't let us in because it was full. Oh, she got in trouble for this, but one of Libby's family members grabbed us out of line and brought us up, and we sat there with the family, which
Wow.
then I guess caused some drama.
That shouldn't, though. If they want you in there, that should be their right.
Well, so then I guess because there was not nearly that many seats reserved for the defense. Because one, Richard Allen's family is smaller, and his wife came almost every day. His mother came almost every day.
What was their demeanor like?
But that was about it. His stepfather came some. His daughter only came on the day that she testified, and she only came. There was separation of witnesses, so I understand you couldn't, with certain exceptions, like you couldn't be in the courtroom before you testified. But she did not come until she testified, and she left right after she testified, and she did not come back. But no, so their demeanor, so they took up fewer seats, of course. And the defense team, who consisted of 3 lawyers as well, it was Brad Rosie, Andrew Baldwin, and Jennifer Auger. They had 2 investigators, or a few investigators that had worked for them that were kind of part of their team. So they took up maybe like a row, and that would include Kathy and Janice, which are Rick Allen's mother and wife. But after the day that we were brought and sat next to some of the family, there were 2 specific, and I will not say who they were, YouTubers,
okay,
who were given designated seats in the defense from the defense.
I know who you're talking about.
And so they no longer had to wait in line. So what kind of like started as a little accidental, like just like, hey, like, oh, like there, and she would not have brought us up if there had not been seats. The bailiffs, had been given a certain amount, and that's what they were following. They were doing their job. But and so she was like, just come up with us because 2 of our family members left, so we've got 2 empty seats. So it was nothing malicious. But then then for the rest of court, there were a few people that got to stroll in right at 8:00 in the morning with a full night's rest and sit on with the defense, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying good for them.
No, I think I know, but yeah, we're not going to discuss who it is, but I think I know who you're talking about.
and I'm not trying to disrespect them at all. I'm not criticizing them at all. I just thought that was an interesting, a tick for tat, it was one of those things. But Kathy Allen, to go back to your question, she was incredibly emotional, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's her husband. People can speculate whether or not she, what she knew, what she didn't know, what she suspected, what she didn't suspect. Same with his mother. I think that it's undeniable that there clearly is love there.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to discredit or say that that's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because someone that you love does something horrendous or awful means you have to stop loving them, especially if you have codependent personality
Yeah, you can't
disorder,
just turn it off.
yeah. And, so I would never criticize any of her any of her emotions.
Yeah.
There were one or two days I found out that she was not in court. And I found out later that it was because he didn't want her to see the things that were going to be shown. And so, whereas Libby and Abby's family, where they were given, given the heads up as well, so that they could have the choice, as most families are in court. Hopefully, if you have a good lawyer, if the prosecutor's good, they will notify the family before things are shown. I have heard and I've seen cases where they are taken by surprise, but
Yep.
Rich John wanted to spare his family from seeing those things, which makes me think he knew what they were going to be seeing. But Libby and Abby's family sat there and they looked at him. There were Abby's mother. I think there was a time she left the courtroom during maybe some of the harder things, but almost every second of that trial. Well, I will say every second of the trial, Libby's grandma and Libby's grandpa and her mom sat and looked. They didn't look away. They looked at everything that was being presented.
Wow.
And my heart to this day breaks because I can still hear some of the emotions that they felt. And same with Kathy Allen. Kathy Allen was visibly and audibly very emotional at times.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I know it's a little emotional. I'll let you take your breath for a second. I'll interject here. It reminds me of the Lori Vallow case where Colby, he has to now compartmentalize who his mother was to who she is today. And he said it took a long time to, turn that love off for somebody and put them in two separate boxes. So I imagine that's what Kathy is dealing with. That's her husband, high school sweetheart. I saw her in the documentary that you produced, and you could tell, she really has a lot of love for him, and you can't shame somebody for that. And I couldn't imagine Abby and Libby's family sitting there looking at him while they're seeing pictures and exhibits and evidence and being able to restrain themselves to sit there. Because I don't have kids, but I would be locked up and in contempt because I couldn't sit there and restrain myself. So how they had that strength, dear Lord.
There was another element to it as well, as far as Richard Allen, in more so than any other defendant I've ever seen in a courtroom, either in person or on TV, interacted with the gallery. And some described it, as I would, in a very uncomfortable manner.
What do you mean he participated in it?
What do you mean by that? He would physically turn his entire body around in his chair and stare at certain people. And when I say, he has intense eyes. You can just look at him and say, so I'm not going to say that, that wasn't, he has intense eyes.
Mm-hmm.
But when he did it to me, he did it to several other people. He did it to Libby and Abby's family members, and he wouldn't break eye contact. He doesn't blink. And when he would just stare at you, and people have told me I am lying about this. People have told me that it didn't happen. It happened. There are enough people that were in that courtroom that knew it happened every day that saw it. It made people uncomfortable. It was very creepy. He would then also turn to his wife very routinely, mouth words to her, such as "I love you." You could normally, because you could, you're sitting behind them, so you can't see what the judge is seeing. We found out later, if you've read any of the court documents or you know anything about the sentencing hearing or anything like that, we found out later that he was rolling his eyes at the judge the whole time, mocking her. He apparently, in one of his cell videos, threatened to hurt the judge because there was a day there were extra security there. These are all things you don't know when you're sitting in the courtroom. So
and they don't play this on TV either.
You're only able to see what you can see from the vantage point, and so when you're sitting, so everyone in the courtroom is pretty much behind the defendant. if you happen to be sitting on the defense side, those were the days you could see him turn and look and mouth to his wife or mom, "I love you," or "It's gonna be okay," or whatever.
It almost, sorry to interrupt, but it almost, because I've lived through abusive relationships, and I'm not saying he abused her. This is just my gathering of what I've seen and watched and how she acts. I feel like she's one of those women that's do as, be seen and not heard. And she was devoted to him, but I feel like maybe there was some kind of coercive control.
Well, that's the interesting thing too, is because if you talk to people that knew them, you would be told the exact opposite.
Huh.
And if you and there are clips and I've interacted with her enough times to, she is the one that goes out and talks. He's the one that's reserved. He's the one that would like to sit in the corner and not interact with people. She's the bubbly one. She's the one that would go out and do karaoke and drag him along. And he always seemed like a reluctant participant.
That's how I was, though. I mean,
and this is not, I'm not giving any medical thing away, but I mean, it was widely stated that they have codependent, that he has I can't remember the definition of it, codependent personality disorder, something like. So I mean, so they have an absolute dependency on each other. Plus, they've been married since the year after they got out of high school.
Yeah. I mean, they grew up together, lived their lives together. But I don't know, just from what I've witnessed, like you said, he can stare at you and it's creepy. I mean, I'm not saying he ever abused her, but he could have looked at her that way and just instilled fear in her. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I could be wrong. He could have treated her like gold,
And maybe he did treat her like gold.
Yeah.
And maybe she was bubbly and maybe she got to do all thing, but maybe that doesn't mean it wasn't his way of controlling her.
Exactly. There's always different forms.
If you keep the circus, I'm not calling her a circus clown, but if you keep the circus clown performing, you might not notice what the acrobat's doing in the background.
Absolutely. Yep. And that is why I think now I'm still pissed off. I remember when I was reading Susan's book and I texted you and I was like, are you kidding me? He called in the day that it happened to basically report himself, and then it was stuck in a drawer for 5 years. And that was a question I wanted to ask you personally. And I know other people have this question, like, why does anybody know why he reported himself there that day? Was it to try to make it look like he wasn't guilty, or was he kind of having those, borderline personalities where he didn't know he was there kind of deal?
He went to the trails regularly to the point where one of the exhibits from the home that they found was a little photo album of the bridge. I mean, so it was not uncommon for him to go there. Mm-hmm. It was not. His daughter has a senior picture, and it's the creepiest thing now. If you've seen it, you've seen it. She's sitting on the bridge in her senior picture. And his daughter, he was older. So this was before the crime. Mm-hmm. There's a slight resemblance to one of the victims. And so I don't know when he had started that morning, we never, the sad thing is, unless he really sits down, and I know he's confessed 61 times as of court. I've heard there have been several more since. That's speculation or hearsay, but we don't know what his motive or his plan was when he got up that morning. What we do know is that he got up. His wife went to work. He had the day off. It was a Monday. He went to his mother's, who lives in Peru or Miami, about 45 minutes away from Delphi. Mm-hmm. And he would do that on a regular basis. He was very close to his mother, and he had one sister. They were going to go to lunch. He didn't want to do the family lunch thing. And so he decided he was going to get a 6-pack and go to the trails. So I don't know if he had already, I don't know if he had told his mom he was going to go to the trails, but regardless, I think he said that when she got home that night around 5 or 6 o'clock, that he was on the couch.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching her.
And that, and that she said something came up on the news and said there's 2 girls missing in Delphi. And he said, what? Like, what? Huh? And she said, well, weren't you out there today? Or he said, I can't remember the exact, I think she somehow already knew that he had been out there. So maybe they normally did talk quite a bit. throughout the day, although the one cell phone out of the 20 million that they recovered from the house that they did not recover is the one that he had that day.
That's weird.
Yep. Doesn't remember where that one is or what happened to that. But anyway.
That's suspicious.
So when he said, he said, I will, and so she said, well, you need to call the police and report it and let them know that you were out there that day. And so at her prompting, he did. And he did not call. I don't know if he called the sheriff's department. And then he ended up meeting with a conservation officer who, because at that point, the investigation had already grown. It was, I think he met on the 16th or 17th, so 2 or 3 days later, in a parking lot of a Save-A-Lot grocery store. And when he met with the conservation officer, the picture of the person on the bridge, I believe, had been released because that was the 15th, and I believe he met with him on the 16th or 17th.
And it didn't look anything like him at that time.
Well,
wasn't it a younger?
If you look at Richard Allen, I mean, this is debated. People would argue. People argue this to this day. When you look at Richard Allen in 2022, he looked nothing like he looked like the man we saw in court. So if you were to sit and watch the interrogation videos or the interview videos that he did back in 2022, and this was 5 years, even 5 years after the murder. I've said this before. The second they started playing the tape of him being interviewed in the first interrogation by Steve Mullins and Tony Liggett, his body movement and mannerism and my entire body went, that's Bridge Guy. And that was 5 years after. So he'd already changed his appearance a little bit. So if you looked at him in 2017, he did look like Bridge Guy. Told the conservation officer that he was on the bridge at the same time. He said that he saw young girls, meaning the other witnesses. He said he was dressed like Bridge Guy.
He admitted to it.
He then later, in 2022, started to alter some of that a little bit. But he didn't alter it enough that it would take away from it being the truth. Because yes, is there a guy in Indiana that probably doesn't own a pair of blue jeans and a Carhartt jacket? Maybe not. I've been to Indiana enough times that I own a Carhartt now.
But everything he said matches up to what people saw.
Yes.
And he ratted himself out and then it got shoved in a drawer.
Right. And so, I think because he came forward and he was a local and it's a small town and you had a conservation officer doing taking down the it wasn't even an interview really. It was really just a witness statement. So it was never looked at as anything more than just another local saying, oh, hey, I was on the trails that day, as were several other people, because it was it was a popular place for locals to go. And I don't think that conservation officer connected it with him being malicious. One, because Richard Allen's height is is the one thing I will say you don't get the sense of from Bridge Guy. He seems short. Richard Allen's short. He's 5'5". And it's hard in that video to get a perception of the height of the man walking because one, it's zoomed in. There's so many elements to it. And people have spent years debating all of that and with far greater knowledge than I. But I have had officers tell me personally that there were times even when they would go into CVS and that Richard Allen would ask about the case. And how's the investigation going? And one of them especially told me that, he remembers getting the hair on the back of his neck stood up and he immediately brushed it off and said, no, he's too short because the FBI 5'10".
While he was working at CVS, was it Abby's mom that went in to get posters made?
No, it was Libby's aunt, Tara.
Libby's aunt. Okay.
And it was for the memorial, which they held at the school gymnasium.
And he said it was on him, right? Like he gave it to him for free?
He did.
Looking back, I couldn't do that. That family has so much strength. I mean, at the time she didn't know, but I couldn't imagine knowing now that she stood face to face with him. I know.
And and something that it made me think about too, and that is, and because they didn't know him, even as small of a town as Delphi is, a few of their family members knew him, knew them. But Richard Allen was a drinker. I mean, that is what it is. They like to go to karaoke, they like to play pool, and they like to drink. I mean, I don't know about Kathy, as far as drinking, but so a lot of the people that knew him from the bars he would hang out at. And there are only a few bars in Delphi, but I know I've been told personally that, in looking back at it, that he was a regular at, at two or three places. And he had the same routine that he would always do. Every day after he would get off work, he would go to this one bar. And then if it was pool night, he'd go to this other place after that, and so on. His pattern changed after the murder. And
that's a red flag. Yeah. Because that's what they look for.
Yes, but it was such a subtle thing.
Nobody was watching him, though.
No one was watching him. And it was just like, oh, well, maybe he's just, now he's playing pool at this place, or, so he started not going out as much, and he started going to like only JC's, which was a bar, and stopped going to, one bar. And, one of the family members worked at that bar. Was that one of the reasons, maybe? And I'm speculating, but, so some people did know him, but I don't think he raised red flags to people.
No.
I think he was forgettable. I think he was a small, forgettable man.
Do you think a part of him called in because he wanted to see if he can get away with it, or to see if he could he felt guilty and he wanted to be caught? I
mean, only Richard Allen can answer the question whether or not he felt guilt. He said he felt guilt, and he said that he would like to apologize to the families of Libby and Abby. That has yet to happen, nor do I think they expect or want it. And he wanted to send them Bibles, I believe, is one of the things he said, once he found God.
Oh yeah, like we all do.
I think he called in to report that he was there because he had already told his wife he had been there. And so he kind of had to.
Do you think if he never told her and he never called in that they would ever have found out that it was him?
Maybe not. I think that if Libby had not had the instinct and the gut impulse to pull out her phone and press record and keep it recording as she held it down, upside down to her side, as Abby got across to her and they realized they had nowhere to go. I think that if that video did not exist, which I don't think he knew about, I don't think he ever would have been caught.
I know they said the cell phone was under her, but I read in Susan's book that she wanted to be a crime investigator. So she was like, she knew about crime stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that she had the instinct to just hit record. Were there any other recordings that they never released, or was that the only one on her phone?
That was the only one on that pertained to the to anything from the crime. And it's not, I think, so much that, because if you put yourself, you live in a small town, your interactions with even strangers typically are not violent or scary, So yes, if you're on a bridge like that, it would be odd that someone is going to come all the way to the end if you're at the end.
Weird.
Because lots of people kind of go out, walk halfway, walk back. So, it would be weird that, you're at the very end and like there's this guy that keeps coming. Because, once you get to the end of the bridge, there's nowhere to go. So I think that Libby instinctively picked up on the fact that something was wrong.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if she necessarily understood maybe the gravity of it in that moment. I think she very quickly did, because he, as we now know, pulled a gun out, cocked it, and told them to go down the hill, giving them no option. But yes, like you said, she did like crime. And she did she wanted to be a forensic, in forensics.
Uh-huh.
And the most memorable line that anyone will probably ever say in a courtroom, and it's probably the thing that will stay with me for the longest from this trial, is in the closing arguments. Prosecutor Nicholas McClellan, he ended, because the prosecutor does his closing statement first. The defense did theirs, which involved some very, very odd medieval torture device pictures, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And then Nicholas McClellan was able to give his rebuttal, so he had the final word. And he ended his closing statement with the words, and I'm paraphrasing, Libby always wanted to solve crime, and she did.
Solved her own.
And they did. They solved their own. And it's true.
Chills.
And I think, and going back to CrimeCon and the Clue Awards, I think that the types of people that their families are, I don't think that it would have, I don't think getting that, I don't think they would have felt like that was something they deserved or they wanted.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm pretty sure, they've not said this to me, but I'm pretty sure they walked up on that stage and they got that award, and they were doing it because that award was Abby's, and that award was Libby's.
Yep.
It wasn't theirs. It was Abby and Libby's.
Yep. I love that.
And just because they can't be here to take it themselves, that award was theirs.
Crime. Wow.
They
I
did.
gotta take a second after that.
And it's something that because of the age we live in now, 10 years before that, someone would not have had the opportunity to solve their own case that way, at least.
Wow.
But yeah. So it's, I sound like I'm in a fan club of theirs or something like that.
No,
but I mean, they really
listen.
they genuinely are to go through the hell that they've gone through and will continue to forever go through, and to still look at the world the way they do and to treat people the way that they do is so inspiring. And it shows me, even though I never met Abby or Libby, it shows me exactly who those girls would have been, who they were and who they would have been, and what incredible things were stolen and robbed from this world. And they talked about that in and not to keep going, I'm sorry, but in her statement, victim impact statement, Libby's grandmother talked about the generational trauma that this crime caused. And it's not something that I think most people think about, but now, and you and I talked about this last time. Abby's family went through the same thing. All of her nieces, all of her nephews, all of her family, anyone for generations to come are going to wonder, what happened to her?
Mm-hmm.
In some of their cases, there are crime scene photos that you can find online. There is misinformation that you can find online. There were people that have been falsely accused that are still being falsely accused in Delphi, whose children have been threatened, whose jobs have been lost. And that doesn't go away just because someone's convicted. Those names and those lines, that's out there forever.
I don't know if this ever came out, or I missed it somewhere because it happened so long ago. Were there signs that he was scouting them out, or were they just a random target that day? Were they just random girls he came upon and decided to act out his fantasy, or did he notice them before? Did that ever come out?
Well, I mean, he Richard Allen is maintaining his innocence publicly.
Now he is, after he admitted it 60 times.
Right. And, whether whatever medical situation, he claims influence that has been disputed by medical experts, saying he was completely in his right state of mind. Others have said he was in a state of psychosis. I don't know. He definitely was not in a state of psychosis when he was making the slitting your throat neck motions to the judge, the bailiffs in the holding cell during the trial. Nor was he in any state of. He was lucid. Every day that we saw him in court, he was lucid and he was not in any state of psychosis, and he continued to confess. So he maintains his innocence. He's never given any indication, because he's never admitted he was even out that far on the bridge. So so everyone you ask, you're going to get a different answer. I personally, and I went so long without speculating or saying any of my own personal, I think that this is something that he fantasized about, probably more so than we could ever imagine. And I think that he knew the type of victim he was looking for. He knew the type of people that would venture out and be out there and go on those trails. Mm-hmm. He knew who he didn't want, because he walked by a few of them.
Yeah, that's true.
And one thing, and so I'll finish the first. So I think that he knew if he ever had the opportunity to be out there, and I think he stalked that bridge specifically. There's two different trails that lead down to one goes over to the bridge, and one goes down to the water. Mm-hmm. From either one of those places, you can see really clearly up onto the bridge. And I think you could hide very, very easily in the tree lines out there, even in the winter. And I think he probably watched that bridge a lot to see if the type of victim he might have been looking for was going to go out there. Because if they went out far enough and no one else was around, then he could get them on the other end of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he knew that once you got someone on the other end of that bridge, there was nowhere to go. And he would then have the control that he needed to do what he wanted to do.
So it was premeditated, but not necessarily on Abby and Libby directly. It was, he scoped it out. He knew what he was looking for. And then he just waited until the time was right where everything fell together.
Why else would you have a gun and a knife on you?
And that was my other question. I know a lot of people have been asking me, and I'm like, listen, I haven't followed this directly enough like you have, Aspen, but people ask me, they're like, how did they trace the gun back to him if a gun wasn't used on them? So how did the bullet end up in the ground if he didn't use it?
I'm just going to quickly, let me close my last thing too, is that, if you listen to, and all of the court testimony is all public now. So you can, even though it's not video, you can read the transcripts.
Okay.
In his own testimony, in his own interview, which actually you can watch that on YouTube. His interviews are on YouTube. He talked about the group of three girls. It was four that he passed on the trail. He passed them very near the entrance, and he described them in great detail, meaning he paid a lot of attention to them.
Yeah.
So in that, to me, and I'm not a psychologist or forensic anything, but to me that means that he was looking for the kind of victim he was looking for, and I think those girls fit that criteria, but there were too many of them. And they were not in the right place. Because why else would you notice? He even noticed the details that the two younger ones looked like sisters, and I don't know. He remembered great detail about them. But as far as the gun, so you hear when he gets them to the end of the bridge, you hear the gun cock, and you can see the outline of it in his jacket. He pulls it out. He holds it up to them. So there's a gun involved. How it was connected to Richard Allen is that about 6 inches from Libby's foot, in between the bodies, not submerged deep or anything like that, but just lodged into the dirt at not the bridge, but at the actual place where their bodies were found, was an unspent cartridge. Meaning it had been cycled through the gun. I'm not a gun person, so I've learned all of this.
I'm not either.
And I have now done it enough times that I understand it much, much more. So if you have a Sig Sauer 22, which is what this gun was, if you have a bullet in the chamber and you cycle it, it will eject the bullet that is in the chamber by popping it out. A lot of times you might not remember that you have one in the chamber. A lot of times, if you want to, that's how you empty it out of the chamber. If you want to make sure it's safe, right? You make sure there are no more bullets in the gun, and then you cycle it out. So it shoots out. So it doesn't shoot out, but it ejects that unspent round. There are then extraction marks made on those cartridges. It's still an arguable enough science as far as whether you can take it to the level of fingerprinting or DNA. But when you have repetitive tests done by multiple people and they all come to the conclusion that yes, these extraction marks all came from this specific weapon.
Well, guns have fingerprints, basically.
Because each gun does they do, but not precise enough that you could take it as a if it's fired, it's way more of a science. But if it's unfired, still, I guess there's still more of an argument there. But this was tested by multiple people, and even an expert for the defense said he would have come to the same conclusion that I spoke to. So, I have full faith in, that what happened was that, when he got them down to where they eventually were left and killed, he might have cocked the gun again to maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
What we do know is one of those girls had to see what happened to the other. Ugh. I know some of the details that I think I know some things but I'm not going to share. But yeah, one of them saw what happened to their friend, and what if, in order to make them do what he wanted, he cocked the gun again. I don't know, and he's forgetting in his friend, in that state of mind that he'd already had that one in the chamber. I don't think the first thing in your mind would be that that unspent round just hit the dirt.
Uh-huh.
But it meant enough to him that when they did a search warrant of his house, the only bullet that they found, they had a little memory box, and like a jewelry box thing above on the dresser. And one of the only items in it was a matching unspent round
Wow.
from, it was a different brand, but from the same gun.
Well, that's going to lead me to the closing part of this. I know a lot of people, first I want to give my respects to Abby and Libby and their families and all the strength that they have. But I know this might have to be another episode as well, but
You talk about this case forever, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's so complex.
there's so much. And I know that he's appealing the trial, and people are now questioning if it's an appeal, is there going to be a new trial, or is there enough evidence where it could be flipped and that he's found not guilty, or do you think he's going to lose?
You want my opinion?
Yeah, I want your opinion. You've witnessed it in person.
No, I don't. Who knows? I mean, I would hate to say there's no chance, but because I don't want to I don't want to get my hopes up like that. But nothing. I left that. I did not go into that courtroom convinced that Rochelle Allen was guilty. I didn't know.
Okay.
Like I went into that courtroom to support the families and to be there for them, no matter who did it. I left court fully, without a doubt, convinced that they arrested the right person for the crime, and that the person that killed Libby and Abby had been sitting in that room with us for those 5 weeks in the defendant's chair and was found guilty and convicted of the crime. That's my personal opinion. I felt that the state presented an incredibly strong case. It was circumstantial. I thought the defense they defended their client. I then read the appeal. I felt that conviction stands on its own. I don't think there's anything in that appeal that rises to even the smallest of level of because one, an appeal is not easy to get. Like it's not an easy burden, and it shouldn't be. But not the points that they made in that appeal to me were laughable in a way. And these weren't even this. I know personally that at least one of the original defense attorneys had a very active role in helping to prepare the appellate attorneys. And I'm not criticizing the appellate attorneys. I've never met them. I'm sure they're incredible, professional, intelligent lawyers. I didn't think that it was a very strong appeal, but I don't think anyone could have written a strong appeal for this case because I don't think there is a way to redeem this person.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been asking me this, so I wanted to ask you since you've seen the first one in person.
I mean, I sat through every court, other than the day with that eye infection, I sat through every second of testimony. And I don't have a doubt, and there's not a doubt in my mind that he's the killer. And I don't believe that he will ever, ever, ever see an appeal. And I will say that when I talked to Libby and Abby's family, and I said, how does this affect you? I'm like, you went through hell. You then went through 5 years of hell, not knowing anything. You then went through the arrest of someone. And then you went through 2.5 years of waiting for the trial. Then you went through the hell of the trial, and you got the conviction, and they got their day, and they got to finally be able to say, they're never going to come back. But at least we have some answers, and there's some sort of justice here. But they knew even then that this was not over. Kathy Allen walked out of the courtroom, and the first time anyone ever heard her say a word in public was that this is not over. And so we knew there would be an appeal. And Libby and Abby's family had told me that if there are 100 appeals,
they'll show up.
That they will sit through them. They will sit there every day, and they will do exactly what they've done since the day that Libby and Abby were killed. And that is devote every second of their lives to making sure those girls get whatever justice they can. Sadly, at the expense of everything else in their lives, because that's one of the things that I have had the blessing to see. I know we need to go, but and when you're so focused and consumed with this horrible event, there are so many things in your life that you feel guilty about focusing on, so you just ignore. Or and I'm sure Gabby's I'm sure Gabby's family can tell you this. I know I've heard some of the Idaho parents talk about this. Stacy Chapin talks about she has two of the children. They deserve just as much of her as Ethan did.
Yeah.
Libby's grandparents, who she lived with, they have several other grandchildren. Those grandkids all deserve just as much of their grandma and grandpa as Libby did. And so once they got the conviction, they were finally able to start giving that much to everyone else and to do everything, one, to keeping Abby and Libby alive and in your memory, but they were able to give the parts of themselves that they hadn't been able to previously. Plus, they were able to actually probably breathe for a minute, even if they knew it was temporary. So if they have to go through this again, they'll go through it again.
I think you brought up Gabby's parents. I remember Jim and Nikki saying, they still have three of their kids. I think they have 2 daughters and a son. I always think there's an extra, there is a younger daughter, but she's grown up so fast that I always think she's younger than what she is. But I know they said that too, they're homeschooled now, but they still had kids they had to be a parent for and show up for. And I couldn't imagine.
That doesn't stop.
No.
If you have little kids, you still have to give them breakfast in the morning.
Yep. They did their best. I'm sure Abby and Libby's family did the same thing. You still have to get up every day. But I think, and I'm one of those people.
And I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't like saying things happen for a reason because nobody wants anything like this to happen. Okay. Nobody wants bad things to happen for there to be a reason for it. But I feel like sometimes things do happen. And I can't speak on Abby and Libby's family, but maybe their purpose was to change, show people that kids using cell phones, are smarter than we think they are. Okay. And now their family are advocates and they can help other families who are grieving and need help. And
I respect
that's why I make sense of shit.
I respect you can't make sense out of these senseless, horrible things. But I respect the hell out of these people, and that's the commonality that I think that you and I have in the fact that, and that's one of, and in them is that something that I have had the privilege to witness now, and so have you, is that the bond that no one wants to have, no one wants to be a part of any of this, but that when you have these people that go through the most unimaginable, horrible things in your life, which I can only imagine would be losing a child or a loved one in a horrific manner. And then you're able to, one, like Stacey Chapin and end up in Washington, D.C., changing laws, or like they just did in Indianapolis and they named a bill after Libby and Abby, or my niece's roommate who was killed in college, who changed basically the entire way ride shares are done, which that's not something you and I have talked about, but we can talk about some other time. But I was, but when Sammy was killed, it changed how Ubers were done. So yeah, people can create change from horrible things happening, and they do find that bond in each other. And it's a club that none of them want to be a part of. But
I remember Gabby's mom.
But there's
Nikki,
always new openings.
Always, and there always is. Nikki had gone to Washington State to support Stacy.
Yes, I know.
For Ethan's foundation, and she wrote on a post like, "This isn't the way I want to hang out with somebody, but I'm glad I have her because it's just an unspoken language that only they understand."
I say that to Libby. I've said that to Abby, to Libby's grandma and aunt several times. I said, I as much as I love you guys and I respect you and that I'm a better person because of Libby and Abby. I wish that I had never met you. I wish that I had never heard of the town of Delphi. I wish that I never even knew any of this, you existed, because it would mean that Libby was 23 years old right now, probably doing whatever 23-year-olds should be doing, which is what all of her friends are doing now. And they would all be alive and living their lives. And I wish that above any good that I've gotten to experience from having gotten to meet these people. I'm grateful for them, and I'm grateful for all of what I've learned and what I've seen them do. But I wish that none of us ever had heard any of their names.
No, I understand, and I know that they understand what you're getting at. Like, it's bittersweet because you're so thankful that
the lives Gabby changed. But I mean, wouldn't you give anything in the world to have never known Gabby's name?
Yeah. And that's not saying it in a mean way. It's, I wish I didn't have to know it the way I did. I wish I would have found out who she was because she became that big social media influencer she wanted to be, not because a man took her life and that's how she ended up famous. I mean, she still got to be what she wanted, but not in the way that
and she made
deserved.
one great.
Yeah, she did. And she changed a lot of laws and had saved a lot of lives. So I know with Abby and Libby to come, I know more things are going to change, and I know that they're going to help save lives. And if they're on, up
And
there on a cloud, and they're going to help people. So,
and if I'm a better person because of them, and Jerry Holman says he's a better person because of them, I know other people. Every day
that's
we
their
hear of the
purpose.
things. Every day we hear of things that happen to people
Yep.
that make us that make us, even if they don't make us a better person, they make us aware of what we don't want to be.
Yeah.
Let's say, I don't know, Chris Watts. Who don't I want to be? Corey Richards. Who don't I want to be? Lori Vallow.
Alec Murdoch.
Who don't I want to? Yeah, exactly.
Scott Peterson.
Or even some of the people in their circles. You're like, no, don't want to be like that.
Yep.
So yeah, so that makes you a better person.
Yeah. I mean,
I
just think Abby.
Go home and make your husband a Moscow Mule without drugs in it.
Yeah.
Or don't go on 1,000 dating websites, and then poison your wife.
Well, we could have a whole episode on that. Maybe we should do an episode on what not to be and what we've learned and what not to be. We're going to do that. No, I think Abby and Libby definitely left their mark on the world. It's a legacy. And if that was their purpose, was to help change lives and make people a better person, then I think that's a hell of a legacy to leave behind.
The hell of a price to pay to do it, though.
Hell yeah, it is. And I'm just so proud of Libby for being instinctual enough to solve her own case.
And Abby. And Abby, whether she did it intentionally or not, she hid that phone. I don't know if I'm not convinced that she, knew that that she was doing it, but because why he would have taken it? Why, why wouldn't he have taken it if he knew it was there?
Absolutely. But the thing is that I got right before we wrap up is that cell phone was under her, so he didn't even see it.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So she can, so she helped just as much as much as Libby helped in recording the video. Abby helped just as much in hiding it, whether she meant to do it or not.
That's like those two soul sisters.
Yep, and they had the opportunity to leave. They had the opportunity to leave each other, and they didn't. Or one of them did.
Wow. Yeah, those two.
You can only kill one person at a time.
God, we're gonna have to. We can keep doing more episodes.
Sorry.
I want to talk.
I'm sorry.
No.
I want to end on a happier note. Let's end on a happier note.
I do too, but I want to say that, I do want to do I would love if you can orchestrate it to get somebody from Abby or Libby's family, or even Susan Hendricks, somebody that has, Miss Susan didn't know them, somebody that can just tell us about who those girls were, the things that we don't find out on TV, the things we don't read about, because I really want the world to know who Abby and Libby were.
That was something that was really important to me. And again, I don't want to be, again, we're going, the documentary that, and I know I got a lot of criticism for allowing Kathy Allen to be featured in it. That happened the very, very end of it, and I'm sorry, it was not the end. There's no question mark at the end of the title, "Catching Their Killer." It's catching their killer. But I'm sorry I think it's a bit hypocritical for anyone to say they would not have also given her that voice, because everyone in the world wanted to talk to her. Yep. She just happened to come on and say it. And you know what? That doesn't mean that that you have to believe her. I thought that the defense attorneys in that documentary made themselves look insane, like they were sleeping in their basement, fumbling around, like recording themselves. They did themselves no favors, in my opinion. And some of the descriptions Kathy Allen gave of her husband and their relationship, I don't think did him any favors towards his innocence either. So I was very interested to see what she would have to say. But one of my biggest things about doing that documentary was I wanted to talk to her friends, so Libby and Abby's friends, because these were kids, and her cousin Josh, these were kids that were 13, 14 at that time. And I wanted to know what their lives. And, and you can only show so much of it in a documentary. But I mean, I did these interviews in the course of 2 days 10, 11 hours, they get, so they get cut down. But I mean, to sit there and to really spend the entire day with Libby and Abby's best friends and cousins telling me about their childhood and what those girls were like and what happened to them, how it changed their lives. Because that was something that was so interesting to me as well. And we can talk about that at a different time.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot I could say about it.
And that's what I would love to do, because I think when we, us who follow true crime, we don't do it for the romanticizing of it or sensationalizing. We respect the families and want them to have justice and have a support system. And I think sometimes people get lost in
The
what
entertainment
happened
value
to them rather than who they were.
Yes.
And I want to know what Abby's favorite color was, and what favorite animal, and just little things like that. Like, she's a person, she's not a case.
Because sadly I can tell you firsthand that if you were to tell a network that you want to spend millions of dollars to make a documentary so that you could say what a 13-year-old girl's favorite color was, they would tell you to F off.
Yeah.
But if you tell them a horrific thing happened to them, they're much more interested.
Well, guess what? It's our job to make people interested.
So balance for me. I had the option. We can go. I had the option of being featured in that documentary, or working on the production end of it. But because it was ABC News, they don't. If you're a producer, which means you do have some control, you can't be then there on air talent, at least in that division. I don't know how it works when you get to like the level of like Robin Roberts or someone like that. But
you were the one interviewing them, though, right? Like when they're talking to the
yes.
screen, that was you. Like we can't hear you, but you're the one interviewing. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Not every single interview, but many of them. Yes, that was me. And especially the ones that were the most important to me and the hardest ones. It was the hardest ones were Libby's cousin and the friends. That was the hardest day of filming. It was the most beautiful day, and it was one of the hardest. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time.
Guys, if you haven't tuned in, Aspen helped produce Catching a Killer?
Catching their killer.
Catching their killer.
The girls on the high bridge.
It's on Hulu. It's a 3-part docuseries.
It's ABC News, yes, and Disney Plus.
Yes, it's really good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have to edit because my computer just shut off.
Right. And if I will say, if you have an opinion on it, if you have an opinion on this case, it probably will not change your opinion one way or another.
I don't think it. I don't think it was.
My intent was I wanted to show who Abby and Libby were, and I really feel like I got to portray that in a way that it had not been done before, especially in episodes 1 and 3. There was so much of Abby and Libby featured, and pictures and videos and memories that no one had ever heard. And that was something that was the only reason I wanted to do it. And of course, now all the other stuff has to come with it too. But I think that it was a good documentary, and I don't think that it's going to change someone's opinion.
I don't either.
But if you're unfamiliar with the case, or you are undecided, I think it's an absolute fair and balanced look at.
I was going to say, I think it's an unbiased docuseries. It gives you
in a very biased case.
Yeah. Yes. And it's not going to sway your opinion on it either way, but it's at least going to give you the information that matters. And I think it was beautifully done. And I like how you included everybody. I mean, again, like you said, Kathy had a voice, and there are two sides to every story. And if she's wholeheartedly believing that her husband did not do it, well, she's a victim in a sense too, because if she didn't know this, or even if she found out like when he finally admitted it, you have to think like the trauma that it's causing her as well. And I know people are out for her, but
and if she did know it, I wanted to hear it too.
There you go.
I mean, what people say, whether you like it or not, can tell a lot. So let them talk.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'll tell you more than what you ask, and then you're like, "Oh, thanks for that answer." They dig themselves in holes. But we're gonna wrap this up because it's been almost 2 hours. We can talk about this. We can do another one. We can do as many as we want to do. That's the beauty of running our own podcasts. Next time, I want to focus on the light of Abby and Libby and the good things that have come from Abby and Libby. I know they have that that park that was dedicated to them, and the stones that people can have inscribed on the ground, and the
They're
Abby and
also,
Libby's family volunteers and runs the little concession stands and whatnot. That's the stuff I want to talk about
they
in the
do
next
everything.
episode.
They do have it all. They do all. Yep, absolutely. We can talk about whatever you would like.
I think the next episode needs to be literally the positive that what they've turned their grief into to move forward.
One thing I wanted to say thank you for is when the first episode we did, and I don't do a lot of these interviews because the case has become so personal to me that I don't do YouTube videos. I don't do things. My relationship is what it is now. I care about the town. I care about the families. I care about the people in the town, and I will do what I can to help. But I respected so much the fact that, like, when we did that first episode, we did not mention the killer's name one time. Because it was the anniversary, the day that we recorded that. And I was very grateful and so I trusted you enough to do it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being open and emotional with me. I know it's a vulnerable thing, and it's hard to relive that every day because, again, you saw things in the courtroom we didn't, and you have that forever. So, it's a whole different situation for you. And I thank you for trusting me to talk. And I know we did mention his name in this one, but I kind of had to.
But this was about the trial. Yeah. So, and I knew that. Yeah.
The last one was because it was their anniversary, and I wanted to focus on that. But yeah, the next one, we're not going to talk about him. We're going to talk about them and the good and the light that's come. But as we wrap up tonight,
we might have to talk about the appeal because there should be something coming up with that soon.
We definitely will, and you have the inside to that. So just we'll talk about the updates. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the weight of everything we talked about. The Delphi case it's not just a headline, guys. It's not just a courtroom transcript. It's a story of two vibrant, loving souls, Abby and Libby, whose lives were stolen, and of the families who continue to show their unimaginable strength in their face of grief, delays, and uncertainty. Aspen, thank you again for bringing us into the courtroom with you, for sharing what you witnessed, and for reminding us that behind every legal filing and every appeal, there are real people carrying the impact every single day. Your perspective matters, and your respect for the families shines through in every word. Every time I talk to you, you have nothing but amazing things to say, and I cannot wait to meet Libby and Abby's family in person. I didn't get to last year, but I just want to hug them. To everyone listening, cases like this require patience, compassion, and a commitment to truth. Justice is not always fast. It's not always simple. And it's always worth fighting for. And as long as this case continues to move, we will continue to talk about Abby and Libby. And we're going to honor them and stand with the people who love them. And I hope Aspen comes back. And if you guys want good information about Abby and Libby, stay tuned for part 3. If you have good questions you want to know about Abby and Libby and the types of girls they were, send them my way so Aspen and I can get those for you.
I love a Q&A.
Okay, we can maybe that's one where we can actually go live. If I can stream it and learn the StreamYard, or go through Facebook or something and have a live audience. That's something I have to work towards, though. I have to figure it out.
Even if you get enough response that we just read the questions, like however you would like to. But no, I agree with you. It does take a while. And can I say really quickly?
Yeah.
You even in a case like Delphi, or a case that is divisive or that people have different opinions on, it's very possible to have differing opinions, but it shouldn't affect your compassion towards the victims or the family members of the victims. I mean, unless you're literally saying the family members of the victim is the one that killed the person, you should not change the amount of empathy you feel for a human being going through absolute hell.
Absolutely not.
Even if you think a different person did it. Like, for the people that I'm out there seeing Brian Koberger is innocent, that shouldn't change the way you feel about Christy and Steve Gonzalez, or, about any of the parents or any of the siblings or any of the victims. You should have just as much sympathy and empathy for them.
I can't agree more. I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah, maybe don't do TikTok dances, on your, when you're a Lifetime actor. Sorry, I'm done.
No, that's a good light to the end of the story.
I'm sorry.
I mean, people do stupid shit online. I mean, there's no respect. There's no empathy anymore. And it's, I don't know. But again, that could be a whole nother episode we do. But all right, this has been part 2 of my interview with Aspen Connor. And yes, we will be back for more. We're going to be traveling a little bit together. In May, we're going to Vegas to CrimeCon. July, Aspen and I are both volunteering, and I'm sponsoring the 3rd annual Gabby Petito fundraiser. They're doing a golf tournament at the Willow, oh God, sorry. It's been a long day. Willow, I can't remember. I'm sorry. Oh my God. It's in Mount Sinai, New York, and it's at a golf course.
It's Willow Creek Golf
Willow
and Country
Creek.
Club.
I am sorry to Gabby's parents.
In Mount Sinai, New York.
I'm sponsoring this too.
It's July 17th. July 17th.
Willow Creek Golf and Country Club. But I was there last year. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's probably the nicest golf course and country club I've ever seen. Mount Sinai, New York. I want to say it's about 5 miles outside.
Did I say I was volunteering? I thought I was just drinking and golfing.
I mean, that's according to Joe Petito. That's part of it.
I'm kidding. I'm so honored to have met them, and I admire them. I have a little bit of a crush on don't tell anyone, but on Nikki.
Aw.
And a little crush on Joe. But you know.
Nope, I'm not
nothing against Tara or Jen.
No, I mean, we've talked about this, and I love all of them. They all have their own unique personalities, and we vibe with who we vibe with, right? So we'll do a podcast after that experience too, because I want your take on it. Last year, my friend Nick interviewed me up there. He started his own podcast, and he's like, you need to do this. And we were talking about the day and domestic violence, and he had it set up. I'm not sure if he's coming back or not, but if I knew how to set this all up, I mean, I could, but I'd have to talk to Nikki to see.
And you don't take away from the event either,
no,
right?
I want to be in the moment, but he
it was nice you to meet Susan there last year.
No, I don't remember seeing her.
My friend Susan, Lauren, and Grayson were there last year.
Susan Mena?
No, Susan Hendricks.
Susan Hendricks. I don't remember seeing her at all.
Yeah, she was there with
see them at all when I was with Nikki and Tara all day.
I don't know.
That's odd.
You weren't in the Delphi world yet, I guess.
There was only a few hundred people there, but yeah, we're gonna go.
You just saw Heather Locklear.
I did see Heather Locklear.
I can't promise I won't be wearing my Amanda t-shirt from Melrose Place. I'm kidding.
Tara's a big fan of hers, and her and Joe went out to California and actually stayed at her house, so they're really close.
Now that she'll listen to this, and now she won't come this year.
No, she's really into the foundation because she said her daughter reminds her of Gabby, and Heather just threw herself into it and is a big sponsor. And we'll get on some golf carts if there's any. That's why I want to get there early, because last year we got there at like 10 a.m. and everybody was there at 7, and people got golf carts to hang out in all day. And me and my friend V didn't get on one till later in the afternoon. And we just rode around the golf course. Joe tells you, he's like, open bar on the golf cart.
I will ship ours out.
He was doing fireball shots at 10 a.m. So
we're on the lake in a golf course. We have golf course, and they're all pimped out here.
Wow. Yeah, this one was just an experience I've never seen, and everybody came together for a good cause, and then there was a band afterwards and food, and Joe said, "Oh, are you gonna keep drinking?" And I'm like, "I can't. I got to ride back to Wilkes-Barre," and he's like, "Oh, you can't party." Like he just wants basically us to show up, volunteer, everybody come together, have a good time. It's not going to be a somber experience. He wants everybody to have fun.
Celebrate Gabby and raise money for awareness, right?
His biggest thing he wants to see every year is debauchery on the golf course. He wants to see a golf cart go up in flames or like go into the pond. Like he just wants that every year. And I'm like, I can make it happen.
That's why they're not sending Joe to Washington, D.C. I'm kidding. But I'm actually missing Nikki before that because, they do so much incredible work. And again, I know we're trying to close so much on college campuses about domestic violence and about raising awareness about how, males and females, but especially females, about how so many people have seen themselves in Gabby. You included. And I know that Nikki is going to be in the same city I'm going to be in at the same time in June and so if I can make it work, I don't know how those events work, but I need to reach out to her and see if I can come.
Absolutely. I'm sure she'll figure that out. I
Yeah.
love Nikki so much. I love all of them. But yeah, we'll be there July 17th. And then in October, we're attending Crime Story in Boston. I'll have a table. It's a smaller crime event. You know, there's no big headliners, but it's for people who just want to get together and support crime and not
you'll be
support
huge
crime.
by then.
But
I mean, you'll be enormous by then. You'll be
yeah, right. No, thank you though.
You know, you'll hit your million subscriber mark. Which congratulations on your the milestone that you did just hit with downloads.
Oh yeah, I just hit 2,500 downloads. I just won best social media page for True Crime with Tiff Kline in my area.
Congratulations!
Thank you. It's something. Again, somebody I posted online last week. Somebody said, "Well, it's ridiculous that you have a podcast and don't try to make money off it." And I said, "Well, it's ridiculous to try to make money off someone's tragedy and trauma. Like, I don't do it to become famous. I don't do it to get likes. I do it because I enjoy talking about this stuff and I enjoy meeting the families and trying to help and be a voice and be an advocate. It's not about how many likes and followers. You know, I have like a few hundred likes on my Facebook page and people say, oh, I see it. Just because I don't engage with it doesn't mean shit. People see it, and I'm not going to not do something just because I'm not making money on it. Like, I don't want it to be work.
And that was something for me. When I went to the Delphi trial, because I do have a YouTube channel. I don't do much on it, to be honest. I am in production now. But my intent in going to that trial was to support the family, to be in that courtroom, to support the families. And so I made a very conscious decision that I was not going there to cover the trial. That's nothing against the people that did go to cover the trial, that were there to make money, not there to make money off of it. But but there were some, I met some wonderful people that I'm still friends with today that were there to cover the trial and do daily recaps of the trial. And I'm thankful for that because there weren't cameras in the courtroom. So, there were some people there that also did daily recaps that were giving misinformation, but neither here nor there. So, there's nothing wrong with making money.
No, and I don't mean it like that.
Something that you are, journalists make money off of off of reporting horrible events every single day of the right now.
Yeah, and giving out wrong information.
There are hundreds of people on the news right now on a million channels talking about probably bombs going off or car accidents or mass shootings or something horrible happening. And they're all making money telling those stories.
I'm not, and again,
I mean, they're glorifying it.
I'm not trying to become this famous, I'm not trying to be Nancy Grace. I mean, I would love to be because I love everything about her, but that's not my... No one can be her.
No one can be Nancy. No one can be Nancy Grace. Still your role.
I love her so much.
I'm holding a pin right now just like her.
I love her so much, and I would aspire to be her.
Joe Scott Morgan, I'm going to go to you right now.
I love Joe Scott Morgan, but that's not why I do it. I do it because I want to help people. And give people an inside. Same. That's it. And I don't need to make money off of it. That's not what I'm doing this for. And if it came later, I mean, cool. Then I would probably give some of it to Gabby Petito Foundation or help the park with Abby and Libby. This is not what it's about, but I do appreciate you getting on here. And again, guys, we'll be together in Vegas. Maybe we'll do a live together. That would be fun. And then we'll do a podcast with Gabby Petito's fundraiser. We'll do another one for Abby and Libby. And then we'll be in October. We'll be in Boston. Aspen and I are trying to go see Salem. We've never been. So
I'm going.
That's our goal.
You can come if you want. I'm going.
Hey, if that event ends up being a bust because it's their first one, I will just pack up and we're just going to go to Salem and Boston. So that's their first one. I don't know what I'm expecting walking in there. So I don't know. But anyway, we'll wrap this up. We're at the 2-hour mark exactly. So thank you, Aspen. Thank you so much. And anybody, again, if you guys want to know anything good about Abby and Libby, send questions our way and we'll have Aspen back on. And
anytime, yeah.
Just keep Abby and Libby and her family.
You can always give out my email address. I'm always available to answer questions or whatever. If someone wants to reach out or has a story, even that I keep everything confidential and private too. I'm not here to capitalize off things.
No.
And for every 100 things that I'm told, I might I'll do whatever I can to help. But I mean, I'm not going to I'm not going to try to like get attention off.
No, and like there's a lot of things I know from Gabby's parents that I don't talk about. It's no one's business.
Right.
What they tell me is what they tell me. If they want people to know, that's their story to tell, not mine. So,
right. And there've been several cases that if I can help, I will pass on the information to people that will make it public if that's what the people want.
Yes, yeah. If we have some pretty simple emails, guys, if you want to email us, I'm truecrimetiffkline@gmail.com, and Aspen is truecrimeaspen@gmail.com. So we're pretty easy to find. If you want to shoot us some emails or send us some DMs.
I apologize to the entire city of Aspen, Colorado, if they wanted to at some point start that email account, but I took it.
Funny story. I met Aspen in Colorado. So I said, "What's your name?" We were sitting outside. It was like we met the night we were outside with Joe and Candace, but we talked the next day after everybody left, and we were outside in the daylight, and we were sitting at the fire pit, and I'm like, "What's your name again?" And he's like, "Aspen." And I'm like, I thought he was joking because I was in Colorado. And the movie Dumb and Dumber just goes through my head. And I wanted to say, California, beautiful. And I refrained because I didn't know you very well. But I remember you specifically saying, no, I wasn't named after the state or city or something.
I've never been there. I've never been to Aspen. But it's funny, because 24 hours ago, Brett from the Prosecutors podcast said he just relayed the exact same story about thinking my name was fake when he met me in Colorado.
Yeah, I thought you were busting my balls. I was like, wait, I know I talked to him last night. I don't remember him telling me what his name was, but
I'm just going to start telling people that it's, that I'm...
I think it's funny that we both had no intention of meeting each other and both ended up at the same fire pit 2 days in a row with each other. It was meant to be. But I can't wait to see you in a few weeks.
We were with a good group of people too.
God, we had so much fun. We were with Candace Cooley.
Crowley.
And Joe Petito and some other people. And
there was a moment at that fire pit that I was like, I don't feel like I deserve to be sitting around these people because...
I know. I was like, is this real life?
Not that, I wasn't like fanning or anything. I was like, okay, they all have a shared experience that I'm kind of an outlier here.
Yeah, that I felt like that too, kind of, but because I'd already met Joe, I didn't feel like I was at a place, but it still felt, I don't know, from an outside looking in, people would think that, oh, cool, they're sitting with them. But it's like, if you actually know them, yeah, it's cool, they're good people, but you also know their dark side, the trauma, and it's hard to, you want to feel sympathy, but at the same time, when they're trying to have fun, you want to keep up with their energy kind of deal. And Joe's always about having a good time. Hopefully we will find him at the smoker's circle.
Really? He got emotional and he cried, and he cried on my shoulder. No.
I can see Nikki doing that. I didn't think about the four for a second, we're going to see them in a few weeks.
But you know what? And they should be allowed to have fun.
Yeah. Oh God.
Thank God they're able. Thank God that I'm sure there have been countless days in all of their lives that they have not been able to get out of bed, let alone smile.
They turn it off, turn it on.
So, and I'm sure there are still days that they won't be able to get out of bed or can't smile. But if for 3 days they can go and be around some people and be able to talk about someone they loved.
I will tell everybody the best way to warm up to Nikki is get her Taco Bell. She loves Taco Bell.
Me too. Same. I like Taco Bell, and I also like money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. No, I do too. So, all right. We're going to wrap this up for good now. Thank you again. We're going to do many more of these. So I'm going to try to have this up for tomorrow. If not, it will be on for Thursday. But yeah, thank you again, Aspen. It's always a pleasure.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm Tiff Kline.
Even though I'm not number 13.
I'm sorry. Aspen and I have this bad habit of saying, let's do one. And then we schedule it and then we reschedule it 10 times, which it's more on me because my schedule's I'm bad at commitment to things. If I say maybe or I'll be there, it's usually I'm not going, or let's do this Monday, and then Monday comes, I'm like, I don't want to do this today.
Well, my favorite number is 13, and so
mine's 31.
So when I was going to be episode 13, and then you skipped me.
I know. I did Titanic.
For Titanic, you skipped me for the Titanic. Guess which one of us is not going to let you down?
No, right? I'm sorry.
Sorry. All right, listen, I'm done.
That's a good one. I'm glad we're laughing. But again, guys, this is True Crime with Tiff Kline and Aspen Connor, giving criminals the disrespect they deserve.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.